find the right end of my knitting that I'm doing here. And this is it's a bit like a comedy show. Actually, I'm going to tell you about my day yesterday. I couldn't believe some of the things that happened yesterday. I have just had my friend was just messaged me. Well, she phoned me actually. And anyway, a husband had been in hospital for a few days. He's had a problem with his gallbladder or something. She's saying they've just fixed it. Don't know exactly what to do, but they blasted, she said. And she said they've sorted out and he'll be home soon. Like. So she had telephoned me to tell me this, and then she's saying, what about knitting that on Monday? Do you think it'll be all right? And I says, oh, I think it's okay now. And I says, all the snow's gone. I says, it's been raining that during the night. I says, there's no snow on the roads on my estate. I says, the main roads are clear, but I says, it's a big circle that I live in. It's a big, the circle, the middle of the estate is a very large circle, and I live right down the bottom of that circle. There's one or two little streets leading off, but the main part is this big circle. And I've had to drive around. It's been like a skating rink. The last few times I've had to drive around it. But it was all clear this morning when I looked at the rain and that, and the temperature had went up a little bit. So I said, I think it'll be okay for Monday, Anne. But I says, I'll let you know one way or the other anyway. And then I sat down and I made myself a cup of coffee and I'll sit down, do a bit of knitting, and I could hear this patter, patter, patter on the window, and I looked, my garden's white. It's like sleet, but very heavy sleet. My garden is white. I hope it's not going to carry on all day. Looks like I spoke too soon when I told my friend anyway. I think the temperatures are getting up the next few days, so it'll probably not last. But I'm going to tell you about my day, well, my night it was yesterday. I was meeting my friend before the bingo. We're going for a meal first because we'll go for a meal usually the first Thursday of the month, but last Thursday was New Year's Day, so it was this Thursday. Now, my car was in my garage, so I went out and tested. When I looked out the window and I could see there was still a lot of snow and ice on the road, I'd have to be very careful driving because I have to go nearly all the way around that circle to the opening that takes me out onto the main road. So I could tell by what was on my drive. I was walking across the snow and ice that was still on my driveway. There wasn't a lot on, but it was crunching under my feet, so I know it's frozen. So I'm going to have to be careful driving around. So I was doing about 5 miles an hour going around the circle. But the main road was clear, and I thought, oh, that's great, about the main road and the rest. And there hasn't been no snow up where my friend lives. They've had some, but it hasn't stayed. It's dried up, and it must be different temperature to where she is to where I am. So anyway, I got off the estate and I'm driving. I thought the next place I worry about is there's a country road I have to go through, and that country road leads me up to a place called Killingworth, and I go around all the roads up there until I get to the Gosforth Park Hotel to get onto the A1. But I have to go through that country road. It's the only way I can get to those roads. Now, that road is never gritted and there's not a lot of traffic on it, and it's always frozen and that. And I thought I'm going to have to be very careful on that road. But when I got to that country road, I forgot there had been a lot of diversions the last few weeks where they're doing things. I don't know what they're doing in other places, but they were sending the traffic along that country road to get to other places. So it was perfectly clear. There was no snow or ice on the road. That traffic had cleared it. So I thought, oh, that's great. So anyway, I managed to get to my friend, no trouble at all. There's no snow at all up where she was, and so that's good. But the roads were getting a little bit icy when we come to park in I picked my friend up first, but we're going for a meal before the bingo, there's only me and Anne go for a meal, and then we pick Molly up afterwards and then go to the bingo. Well, the car park where I had to park, I nearly slipped when I got out of the car because it was so frozen, the ground and that. Just frost, like really frozen. That there was no snow or ice or anything, just that frost on the ground. So I just had to be careful coming out of the car park. Well, I had left a little bit earlier because I wasn't sure what type of weather, what it was going to be like, and what the roads were going to be like. But they were okay, so I got there a little bit sooner than I wanted to be. So I messaged Molly and told her what time we would be leaving. It's the Percy, that's the place we go for the meal. So I messaged Molly and I told her that we'll probably be a little few minutes earlier tonight, Molly, but she was quite happy, she wasn't bothered. So I picked Molly up and we got to the bingo a little bit sooner. Now, but my friend Anne had messaged me earlier before I came out to go for our meal and that. She said she had been doing some knitting. She was doing a little cardigan and she was having a little bit trouble. She had put the neck and the bands on, but she says there was something, it was all twisted, she said. She says, will you have a look at it? Well, I take my knitting when I go to the bingo because I'm knitting during the breaks and that. And I said, well, okay, bring it in. We'll have a look where you're sitting and see if I can see what you've done wrong. When we got there and sat down, I couldn't believe what she had done wrong. She had knitted all the pieces, she had put the neck and the bands on, but one side she couldn't get it sewn up properly. She says it's all twisted. When I'm looking at it, I don't know whether it was the sleeve she had twisted or the front she had twisted, but it was twisted and you couldn't. I tried pulling it inside out and pulling it this way and that way. I think she had just twisted it, but it wasn't like staying that way, but it was staying that way. She must have twisted it when she was sewing it. So I said, you're going to have to take the seam on the sleeve out and down the side. I said, because you've twisted the front somehow. So she was poking, pulling and trying and she was saying, I can't get it. Oh, I says, give us it here, man. So I unpicked it all for her and I says, there you are. I says, I've untwisted it. I says, you had the front, you had twisted it somehow before you stitched the sleeve to it. Whatever she had done, she had twisted it somehow. And it had twisted the whole thing so it wouldn't lie right. So I unpicked it for her and I says, there you are. I says, now you're going to have to sew the sleeve one seam. I took both of the sleeve seams out. I took the side out. I joined the side to the back. I'd unpicked that, and then I'd unpicked the two seams for the sleeve where it had joined the back and where it had joined the other front. So you're going to have to sew those two seams again. Make sure you don't twist them this time. I don't know how she twisted it, how she did it, but she did anyway. I says, you're going to have to untwist, make sure you don't twist them, I says, and stitch them back down again. And then you'll have to stitch the seam up the sleeve and down the side again. So anyway, she was doing it and then I was I got my knitting out, trying to do a little bit of my knitting because I had to stop doing that to help her. And then she says, I've stitched the seam, but she says, it's funny. She says, I don't know what's wrong with it. I can't get it right. And I'm looking at it and I say, Anne, she had stitched the raglings, but she had stitched one side of the sleeve to the back or the front, one of the fronts, one of the seams on she had the seam, the back and one of the fronts to stitch together after she'd done the sleeve seam. She had stitched one side of the sleeve to one side of the back. And I says, Anne, you've stitched the sleeve seam to the back seam. And she said, what do you mean? I says, you've stitched the sleeve, instead of putting the two pieces of the sleeve together, you've stitched one side of the sleeve to the back. And she's going, oh, just I'm sick of it. Throw it down. He's get it here. So I picked it again and I was sitting and Molly sitting next to me and she says, Sheila, stop it, will you? I says, "Stop it." She says, "You know how slow I walk." She says, "It's going to take me ages to get to the loo and I'm nearly peeing myself here." I says, "I cannot help it, Molly." I says, "I just cannot believe someone can be like that with a little bit knitting." So I unpicked it for her. And we hadn't any pins or anything, but she had brought a couple of needles for sewing with her. There was still a couple of needles in the bag. So I stuck the needle, I pinned the side of the sleeve, the two pieces of the sleeve together, and I pinned them. Now I says, "Those pieces you sew together," I says, "in the front, in the back." I put the other needle in the other part. I says, "You sew them two pieces together." And Molly said to me, "I'm going to have to go to the loo." She says. So I sorted that out, and by this time the bingo was ready to start, and all I'd done was one row of my knitting in that. We got there at, usually get there for about 7:20. I think it was about 7:05 when we got there, and all that time I spent putting Anne's cardigan right. All I got was one row of my knitting. That was 8:15. The bingo was ready to start again. I thought, oh well, okay, I'll have the a little bit time during the games to do a little bit more of my own. Well, when we got the next break, I had to help her with the buttons. She was sewing the buttons on the cardigan. She couldn't thread the needle. She was trying to thread the needle. And I says, "Anne, I gave you one of those little fine things. It's got hooks on the end." I says, "You stick it through the hole in the needle and you put the wool over the little hook and pull it through the needle like that." And Molly said, "Sheila, I'm going to kill you in a minute," you see. I just could not believe it. But anyway, that was the night. We never won anything at the bingo last night. Not for the want of wanting a number. All of us were waiting for one number. I don't know how many times, but it never came out. But anyway, it was time to go home. So got home. We dropped Molly off first, and then I dropped Anne off and got down onto the slip road going to the A1. It was starting to snow. I just don't believe this. But it was just sleet, like it didn't last. And by the time I got nearer home, it didn't seem to be any. It just seemed to be where Anne and Molly lived. It didn't seem to be closer to home. But I come on a road um, called Sandy Lane that gets nearer to where I live, and takes me to Killingworth and the places, and then to Backworth where I live. Well, at the end of this road, Sandy Lane, there's a massive big roundabout, and there is about, I'm trying to count in my head how many traffic lights on it. From where I go on it, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's 4 sets of traffic lights around this big island. And I pulled up, traffic light was on red to join this island, and I have to go where the traffic lights are, and when they turn to green, I go to another set of traffic lights, and then around to another set of traffic lights, and then carry on further up the road, round the roundabouts and everything. That's the rest of the way home. Well, I come to this first set of traffic lights. It was on red. I was sitting there, and it seemed to be on red. There was one car in front of me, and there was cars coming up behind me. But it was sitting there and it seemed to be on red for ages. And I was watching the traffic coming from the right. When I first pulled up there was traffic coming from the right. So I knew theirs were on go. And then it stopped and there was no more traffic coming round, but the traffic lights were still on red. Waited a couple of minutes or however long it was, and then the traffic started moving from the right again. I thought, well, those traffic lights should have changed. And this went on 2 or 3 times, and eventually I realised the traffic light wasn't working. It must have been stuck on red. And the fella in front of me was sitting waiting for them to change. I mean, my sense told me that there was something wrong with the traffic lights, but whoever he was, it hadn't hit him yet. So I tooted the horn, just a little toot at him. to tell him, and he got out of the car and he come up to me and I'm pulling the window. He's tapping on the windows. I'm pulling the window down. And he says, "Do you think there's something wrong with the traffic lights?" I says, "Yeah, I think there's something wrong with the traffic light." I says, "The traffic's been coming from the right and stopping," I says, "about 3 times since I've sat here." It is, and the fella behind me was flashing his lights. He must have been trying to tell the ones in front, to move. And he says, "Well, what'll I do?" I says, "Get in your car." I says, "Watch for at the right." I says, "If there's no traffic coming," I says, "go around the island." So that's what he did anyway. He started moving. But the next lot of traffic lights were on red as well, and he went straight past them, and there was tooting and all sorts. Them ones were working, and he thought they weren't, and he had went past them. Because by the time I got up to them, they changed to green. So that was another thing. And I got home anyway. Come on to my estate. When I get to my estate, I turn left into the the road that I take onto the estate, and I go down just a small part of the road before I join this big circle that takes me to where I live. There's probably about over 130, about 135 houses around this big circle. I think it's around about that. I'm not certain the actual number. I think it's about 135. Well, I'm number 94. So when I go around that, I always take the shortest way up to this entrance out of the estate. But that's when I'm coming that way. I'm turning left, but this way I had to turn right, so I was further across the road. So I turned right to go around, and my car, the wheels were just spinning round. There was great lumps of chunks of ice and everything on the road, just on this part. And my car wouldn't turn right. It kept going further down, and I was gently braking, and it wasn't stopping with the brakes either. I ended up on somebody's drive. I managed to get her to stop and just kept going down instead of turning round like that. But I managed to get her to move it, and I thought I'm going to be hitting the wall in a minute. But I managed to get it into somebody's drive, and there was no snow on the drive, so I managed to stop it there and I had to back out and go back around and turn around. I managed to get home, and there was still a lot of ice and that on my road round that estate. But it was okay, I got into my own drive and into my garage, and that was it. Oh, thank goodness for that. What a night I've had tonight. So I came in and made myself a drink and put my computer on and watched a little bit TV before I went to bed. It's one of those days when you're glad it's over. So that was my day yesterday. So if you like, that's a little story actually. Like, thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll catch you all another time. So bye for now.